Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our second Digital Pan-Asian FP&A board. Today we'll be talking about building winning FP&A teams for the new normal. My name is Hans Govin. I am interim finance director, FP&A director, and international FP&A board member. And today I will be your facilitator. Joining me today as well is Larissa Melnichuk, who is the CEO and founder of International FP&A Board. We look forward to having a great meeting today, and we're joined by a member of panel that is very geographically spread. We have 6 members from various parts of the world. Just for info, we have nearly 400 people having joined us on the webinar, so we're looking forward to a great meeting today. Moving on, let me quickly take you through what we've got on the agenda today. So today we'll be talking about FP&A team roles and skills in the new normal. How do we build and sustain synergistic FP&A teams? Adapting FP&A teams to the current situation. How are we using technology to build award-winning teams? We will also talk about FP&A skills roadmap. We will go on then to talk about how recruitment is faring in the new norm, and then we will go through to conclusions and recommendations. Just a quick slide on FP&A Trends Group. As you all know, we are in 27 cities, 16 countries, 4 continents. We do a lot of FP&A education as well as strategic and advisory research. The next slide is on the previous meetings, agenda points or discussion subjects we've had in Australia. Just highlighting right at the bottom, this is our second meeting. So the first one we had in terms of digital was around adapting financial planning and analysis to the new normal. It is now a great time for me to start introducing our great members of the panel. So to start off with, our first speaker today is Amanat Kamat, who is head of finance at the AXA Group operation. Amanat is a KL Kuala Lumpur FP&A board member as well. And Amanat will today talk to us about FP&A teams and roles and skills in the new normal. Amanat, great of you to join us.
Thank you, Hans. Delighted to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amanat. Our second speaker for the day is Abby Obimingi. Abby is head of FP&A at Hitachi and London FP&A board member, and she joins us from London. Abby will be sharing her experience as to how she's building and sustaining synergistic FP&A team within her organization. Abby, glad to have you with us this morning. Hello, Abby.
Hi, Hans. I think the quote for the year is you're mute, so it's nice to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Abby, and good to have you here. Our third speaker for the day will be Christopher Mansfield, who is Finance Director, APAC Technology at Dentsu International. Chris is a Melbourne FP&A member. Chris will be talking to us around how he is adapting his FP&A team at Dentsu for the new normal. Chris, great of you to join us this morning.
Thanks, Hans, and looking forward to it, and welcome to everybody who's joined the call.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chris. Our fourth speaker is Mark, who's Enterprise Director at Qubix, Australia and New Zealand. Mark will today speak on technology to build winning FP&A teams, and Mark joins us from Sydney. Hi, Mark. Glad to have you with us this morning or this afternoon.
That's great to be here. Thank you, Hans.
Thank you. Himashi Suriano is our fifth speaker for the day. She's the Managing Director, APAC at Association for Financial Professionals, AFP, and will be giving us her views on FP&A skills roadmap for the new normal. Himashi joins us from Singapore today. Hi, Himashi.
Hi, Hans. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Great, excellent. Thank you. And our final speaker for the day will be Ross McClelland, Associate Director at Michael Page, who will be giving us an insight on FP&A teams and skills, absolutely from a recruiter's perspective. So Ross joins us from Sydney this afternoon. Hi, Ross. Glad to have you with us.
Hey, Hans, and hi, everybody. Great to be here, as always, part of the FP&A board events. Fantastic.
Thank you very much. This sort of concludes our intro session. We have a great selection of panel members who will be giving us their insight into the subject matter on discussion today, and also different views from different parts of the world. So speakers, thank you very much. If you could go offline and go on mute. Thank you. So I would like to now quickly just share with you the apologies. Before we go on, I would like to quickly say thank you to our technology partner today, which is Qubix. And Qubix is a global FP&A specialist, as we all know, with over 30 years of experience across 5 countries. Qubix helps companies transform their FP&A functions and benefits from the latest technology innovation. Thank you very much, Qubix. Our next sponsor is Michael Page. As we all know, Michael Page is one of the world's leading professional recruitment consultancies. Our third sponsor is our global education partner, which is AFP, Association for Financial Professional, which is the certification for finance and treasury, and also over the last few years for FP&A professionals. So thank you, AFP. Right. So before I pass on to the members of the panel for their first presentation, I would like to quickly just introduce or share with you again the 5 critical FP&A roles for a successful FP&A function. This, let us remind ourselves, was adapted from Mark Gandy's 3 critical FP&A roles. I will take you quickly through the first 2, which are the buzzwords at the moment and the key as we find it. The architect. So what is an architect? And here we're talking an FP&A architect. The architect understands drivers, data architecture, builds driver-based model, implements flexible analytical solutions. So very different from the traditional architect. It's all about understanding the drivers, about building driver-based model. The second one is the data scientist, which we are seeing more and more asked for within FP&A. What are they data scientists? Data scientists uses mathematical, statisticals, and machine learning techniques to extract, cleanse, organize, combine, analyze, and present data to help organization in decision making. They are the bridge between data science and finance. The analyst, the storyteller, and the influencer, I think, are roles that we are all used to in our day-to-day life. So I'm not going to dwell a lot on that. We now move on to looking at live example of how these roles are being used in organization to maximize value. Our presenter will now share with us where he is currently using a mix of these 5 roles that we've just gone through in his organization. So our next presenter, or our first presenter for the day, is Amanat Kamat, from Head of Finance from AXA, who will be talking to us around FP&A team roles, skills in the new normal. Amanat, over to you. Ready when you are, Amanat?
Thanks, Hans. So we can move to the next slide. Yeah. So hi, everybody. Irrespective of the industry that you work in today, all of you would have noticed a huge change in the way your business operates. You may have seen competition from unforeseen competitors. Your CIOs talking about, the new digital ways of doing business, and also the utter lack of talent in your teams to manage this new challenge. I'm sure most of us would have heard some comments from our senior leadership team, which say the reports I'm getting are not giving me adequately actionable data. Finance is just a scorekeeper and really cannot influence any business outcomes. Finance doesn't understand what's happening out there in the market and have no business awareness. Some people also say that finance is too slow and provides data which is stale by the time it reaches us. So just remember that FP&A teams are now expected to play a very crucial role in every company's digital transformation process, as they act as the gatekeepers for critical financial and operational information across the whole organization. This includes data relating to sales, operations, supply chains, as well as real-time industry and market statistics. However, what's happening in reality is that finance as a function has not been transforming itself at the same pace as the business it is operating in. In many cases, we are held back by old age practices and processes which have largely become irrelevant in the new age. So in today's session, what we will do is cover some topics which will hopefully give you some food for thought on how you can transform your company from a pupa to a beautiful butterfly. On the next page, so Hans, can you just move over? Next slide, Hans. Yeah. So let me try to illustrate to you how delayed and aggregated information, financial information, can look useless to our internal customers by using a bowling analogy. So think of a department manager as a bowler throwing a ball at pins every minute, but we don't let the bowler know how many pins he has knocked down with each throw. So at the month end, when we close the books, we calculate the exact number of pins knocked down by the bowler during the month, and we compare this with the standard. And then we report this back, this variance back to the bowler. So if the total number exceeds the standards, is below the standard, then we ask the bowler for explanation, and then we encourage him to do better next period. You can imagine that we cannot expect to build many world-class bowlers with this kind of approach. Let me give another example. Many times the monthly performance reports that we share contain extensive cost allocations. So the managers are being held responsible for performance which is not controllable by them, or not even in many cases traceable to them, leading to frustration. So continuing with the analogy of the bowling alley, think of a company having 35 alleys representing different departments. So we may keep detailed records of the performance in each alley over the month, and then we report back at the end of the month the average of all the bowlers, and let's say it is 8.28714 or some number like that. So this number is very, very accurate to the decimals. However, it is completely useless as far as the bowler is concerned, because it's an aggregate information. They do not get any feedback on how they can improve in their next toss. Ideally, the managers or the senior management do not want the numbers to be contaminated or influenced by the actions of others over which they have no control. So hopefully with these two examples, I have managed to show you the view from the other side of the business and why they think the way they do. Next slide, please. Hans? Yeah, in this slide, I will try to explain to you what we did in my company, which while I was in the Japan stint, a few things that we realized and what we did. We were facing the same question of relevance in the finance and particularly in the FP&A domain. So we did a few changes. So first, we modified our structure. We modified our finance structure into three parts. The first part was the accounting part, which we outsourced off to another company. Then the remaining teams we split into two. One was basically the specialists who had domain expertise in specific areas such as pricing, project management, reporting, etc. And another as a part of business facing teams. So these finance guys were part of the business teams which were actually working on the ground. So this brings me to the second point, which is partnering with business. So this is something which is very, very important of late, and which was not happening adequately in the past. In the new normal, it is imperative that we partner with our business teams even more closely than ever. So we introduced the concept of finance business partners who worked extensively within the business teams. They understood the business issues firsthand, and they kind of solved it by taking the help of the specialists who are in the other team. So there were specialists and there were business partners, and both of them coordinated to deliver solutions in an agile manner. We also put in a process of job rotation to ensure enrichment of our people and to reduce the chances that somebody gets very comfortable in one role. Third, technology. So we adopted that in a big way. Just to give you a few examples, we introduced online dashboards instead of doing just month-end updates. We also, then the managers did not have to wait for monthly reports for taking decisions. We invested in scenario-based forecasting tools for doing auto analysis on some areas like accounts payable, sales, etc. Most of these were off-the-shelf products, which we did not have to spend too much of money on customization. We also introduced several self-service tools which moved the owners of data capturing from finance to the actual people, releasing time for finance guys to do some real value-added analysis. In many areas, we also introduced reporting by exception and sunset some regular reports which were not being reviewed that often by the end users. Finally, we trained our FP&A guys in storytelling. Nothing very great, but we made each member aware that simple stuff like know your audience, anticipate the questions in advance, do not clutter your slides, don't use too much of accounting or finance jargons, and always connect your story with the corporate strategy. We also ingrained that they have to remain factual and should not present the conclusion. So their job is to present the story, the facts, the data, so that the audience is able to take the correct decision. Yeah, next slide, Hans. Yeah, so most of you would have seen that things have become more unpredictable. We have evidenced this in particular in 2020 with the pandemic. But remember that the winners are the people who find solutions in every problem. So in this scenario, data-driven decision making is the only solution, and FP&A guys are the only guys who can support this. So that's it from my presentation so far. I would like to thank Larsa for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this topic, and all of you for listening. Thank you.
Amanat, thank you very much for a great presentation. I really like the way you've taken the analogy of bowling and put that the whole context of finance into that. But also thank you for sharing how you're using those 5 key critical roles within your organization to move it forward. So thank you very much for a great presentation. I would like to ask the other members of the panel, namely Abby, to give us her point of view on Amanat's presentation. Please, Abby.
Hi, Amanat. I think you set the ball right for me to actually move on to my next slide. And once again, the bowling alley, it's spot on when we talk on time, real-time reporting and analysis. That just kind of brought it to light. You can actually see the impact of no matter how you're enjoying that, you cannot just keep records. So thank you for setting the stage nicely.
Thank you, Abby. And Mark, could you give us your comments on the presentation, please?
Hans and Amanat, also a really good presentation. I think the use of your technology and how you've identified, the skills gaps, especially bringing the data together for the team to use, we're seeing that as a real trend as well. So I think the skills required and how you acquire those skills and how those are joined together with the technology change, I think that's really appropriate. We're seeing a lot of challenges in the market at the moment.
Thank you very much, Mark. By the way, your webcam was off, just to bear in mind for the next question. So, Mark, Abby, thank you very much. Amanat, thank you very much for your presentation. And guys, thank you very much for your comments. We will shortly be going on to the polling question. But just before we move on to there, for whatever reason, I skipped over one introductory slide, especially to do with our attendees, just to make you aware that you can start asking questions to each of the presenters via the chat box. So whenever you're ready, just fire that question away. You could do it now all the way through to the session. We will try and very definitely answer most of your questions, if not today, via email. And the key other thing to highlight is we've got 4 polling questions. We will come on to the next one shortly. And at the end of the session, we've got a feedback session that is very important for us. So before we close the webinar itself, if you guys could go on to do that as well, that it'll be excellent. So just moving on to our first polling session. I think we've heard from Amanat, we've heard from myself on how these 5 key roles are playing an important in terms of building our FP&A capability. It'll be great to now hear from you, members of the board and our esteemed attendees, as to how you recognize which one of these are the important roles in your organization over the next coming few years. So I've just launched our first polling question. If you could vote, please. I will just quickly read it out to you guys. So what is the role? What role do you think is the most important in your organization for an FP&A function? Is it the architect, the data scientist, the analyst, the storyteller, or the influencer? If you could vote, please. I'll give it another 10 seconds before I close the vote. That would be great. We've seen 65% vote already, which is excellent. Please, another 5 seconds, and I will now close and then share it with our members. So we can see 7% have gone for the architect, 15% for the data scientist, 13% for the analyst, 21% for the storyteller, and then the biggest one there is 43%. So softer skill is still leading the way. Amanat, if you can give us your comment on what we're seeing here, please, that'll be excellent.
So very much the trend that I would have expected, actually, because even I would say the same. What I think is finance is mostly seen even by the finance guys and by outsiders as a highly kind of technical or a hard skill. So obviously the first 3, I think we think that we can manage those quite on our own. The last 2 are more of soft skills, and this is areas where most of the the old school thought people require a lot of building in this particular area, and that's why each one of us, most of us at least, think that these are the areas which are more important for us, because we ourselves see that we lack in those areas to some extent. So I agree with most of the guys, I would say.
Thank you, Amanat. And Abby, your comment, please. Abby, you might be on mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay. Your comment on this one, please.
I think the poll is quite leaning towards where FP&A is going into today, not just using the data, but actually bringing the story to light and influencing the decisions with our various partners and our various companies' vision. So I think it's spot on in terms of where I see the trend is going.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Abby and Amanat. And I will now hide the poll, and then we will move on to the next session. So our next session is by Abby. So now we know the roles. How do we go about building that award-winning team? More importantly, getting the best out of our team and also keeping them motivated in the new normal. Our next speaker, as I said, is Abby Obimingi, head of FP&A at Hitachi, who will tell us how she's doing exactly that within her team in Hitachi. So, Abby, whenever you're ready, Abby, the mic is yours and over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hans, could you move to the first slide, please? Looking at the slide, we're talking about teams, and I'm taking a team, a sport team, which is not usually signified with a team, which most times relates with coming together. And coming together means coming with your best. If you're going to be in an athletic club, you train, you make sure you're ready for the various elements of it, and then you're chosen. Then you move on to keeping together, which is actually making sure you get better in what you do. We talked about the various roles that we see, the data architect, the storyteller, and also the influencer. We all do our best to actually ensure that we progress in our role and improve on the things we do. However, working together to become a successful team means that when the team translates from their individual personal base and now becomes a relay team, they are building on the strengths that they used in coming together. They are building on top of those things that kept them in progress. But more importantly, they are working for the success of not just what the FP&A deliver, but also the climate in which they perform and the goals and vision in which they do. I think Henry Ford is so adapting when it comes to thinking about those elements. But this sport is not something that is used to team sport, but you can see how it has pivoted. Next slide, please. So when we talk about building together, just looking at the 3 pillars, still using the quote from Henry Ford, how do we've come together, we're looking at building our teams, we're taking a strategic point of view of where we are. And what I usually do when I start off with, or become a head of a team or have a new team, I actually look at what my vision is for the FP&A team, but also for the organization. And in FP&A, we do budgets, we do strategies, we know what the vision is. How can we translate that into our various teams using our various roles and using that element? Back to the first slide that we spoke about, the new influencer teams or the storyteller or the data architect. Which one of them is most important in your team that will help build the future? Foundation is key, and when we capture that, it is quite important. If we look at the next pillar, keeping together, still in that team, how do we come together and build trust within our team? I've had people in the past where they were fantastic in their technical knowledge, but they couldn't bring the team together because of the way they delivered it, and that kind of rubbed off on the team. Trust is important. Respect within our teams, in our various roles within the team is quite good. But the freedom, I like to give my team the ability to go out to an industry. Where I currently work, we're a multicultural company with multi-industries, and one team doesn't fit nicely. The same thing looks taken on from Amara's report, where he talked about the storyteller and building FP&A partners. We need to be able to give them the freedom to explore, to analyze, to use the data and build upon what they are used to doing. Otherwise, we wouldn't get that ability. And then, of course, we have to have an agile mindset. The new norm has taught us that perfectly, but we always have to reset, assist, and enable our teams from a different perspective. Next slide, please. So when we talk about building a synergetic team, what is the benefit? Why do we do that at all in any shape or form? It's because we can have a dashboard, and we're good at that, but what do we do to enhance that dashboard? What do we ensure to make sure it is possible that we do the various return on elements that we have been doing? But more importantly, extending the technology that we have. So we have a good team, you've built on the team, you have the technologies out there in front of you, and building that element is quite key. How in my current organization, it's ensuring that I pick the right talents and make sure I have the right tools to put it in place. But building that benefit until it benefits my strategic partner, until it benefits their vision, it's just a collection of the same problems we've had in the past if we're not doing those benefits. And as strategic leaders, most of us are on the call, we're here because we want to have a better team or want to improve what we have. It is quite important that we take back what we've learned from our understanding. But if we have employed somebody that is good at their job, let them do their job and let them improve on that job that they do. But more importantly, we are building the new future FP&A team. A few years ago, we didn't have data scientists, data analysts, but now we are having that. Their ability to change their mindset and become who they want to be in the future is quite important. Next slide, please. And we've all heard this acronym of a team, and I think it still applies to FP&A. Together, everyone achieves more. Sometimes it's together we can achieve miracles. We can change a platform from what it used to be. In so many things, FP&A is driving finance transformation within the organization and within their various business space. So that is quite important. And that's where us as business partners or strategic partners is important for us. But how can we continue to achieve more? And I think for me, just flipping the teams in another life, we need to train our team. Training is so important. It could be informal, it could be coaching, it could be mentoring, it could be any various elements of it. But when we train, we need to make sure we have the avenue to put it to practice by educating the people and making sure that it gives us all that is important. Attract good talent, ensure that you are putting the right person in the right tool and letting them do their job. Train them, guide them, give them the leadership, but as leaders, you let them do what they need to do to perform the goals because you set the vision, and keep them motivated. Different things come with different motivation, but for you to achieve that, and I know that in my team over the years, I've actually had to ensure that, one, I give them an opportunity to learn or step up or even move into their group so that they can stay motivated, but more importantly, stay within the FP&A team. I think that's all for me in the slide, and thanks for having me. Over to you, Hans.
Abby, thank you very much for a great set of presentation. I really like, how you started in terms of, taking that relay team and also talking about it is an individual sport, but how do you get the best out of, very, very strong team when you put them together? I always like to use the example of a football team whereby you can buy, 11 most expensive players, put them together, but guess what? They don't win the league. So very, very similar to what you've done there. And also where we have, the slide there in terms of the team acronym as well. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. I would like to invite Amanat to give us his point of view on the presentation theme, please. Amanat.
Hi. So wonderful points, Abby. Thank you. So I agree that the synergy of the FP&A teams are absolutely non-negotiable. This is the only way I feel we can learn from each other's successes and mistakes. Today, because most of us are multinational companies, there is a lot of scope to learn from each other. Personally, a very simple and powerful way that I do collaboration is by involving myself in doing global benchmarks across geographies in our own company to see who is doing best and to learn from them on a continuous basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanat. Can I please invite Chris to give us his comment as well, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Hans. For me, I mean, in my experience from about 20 years working in various finance roles, probably my reflection, it's a bit of a cliche, but change is the only constant. And I think particularly when it comes to building a team, I've found, you generally get such a short time with people together. If you keep a team together for 12 months with relative stability, you're going pretty well. So I think, if you want to truly build a synergistic FP&A team, it's imperative that you set up your vision and set up your model in order to support that, so that as people come and go, the new people can slot in and add to the mix without damaging what's already in place.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Amanat. And Abby, thank you very much for a great presentation and insight in how you building that team and keeping that team motivated, especially in the day and age that we are post-COVID or in COVID. So thank you very much. It is now a really good time to learn about synergistic team, but from our audience. So if we were to go to our second poll, which is around the biggest barrier to team synergy, I am just about to launch that, and I've just done that. So our second poll for our pan-Australian FP&A board for today is: what is the biggest barrier to team synergy in your organization? Is it internal competitiveness? Is it different mindset? Is it poor listening and communication skills? Is it knowledge deficit? Or is it a lack of alignment around goals? If you can vote, please, I will give us another 10-15 seconds. We've got 45%, 50% voted. So please give us your point of view on team synergy within your organization. I will now close the poll, and I will share the results with our members. So 3% went for internal competitiveness, 25% different mindset, 13% poor listening, 16% knowledge deficit, and 43% a lack of alignment of goals. So if I can ask Abby to give us a quick comment on what we're seeing here, Abby, please.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. Lack of alignment of goals is quite key. People perish if there is no vision or foundation. So you can have the best set of tools and the best set of people, like you said about the football team, and not even know how to achieve that or use that. So spot on. Well done, audience.
Thank you very much, Abby. And Chris, can we have some comment from yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Hans. Look, I think it probably reflects, where I thought this might go. I think probably the benefit with, if it's a goal alignment thing, there are measures that we can take. You can look at formal measures such as KPIs, incentive structures, and informal things, having the right leadership conversations to bring those goals back into alignment. Probably if it's the 25% who are in different mindsets, that might speak to something a bit more deeper, a bit more cultural within your organization, which is a much harder problem to solve for.
Excellent.
Thanks,
thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Great insight. Obviously, we're seeing 25%, which is really high in terms of different mindsets. So we've got to align, and again, aligning around goals is the key one at 43%. If you put those two together, that covers the bulk. So these are what we need to be really looking at in terms of being leaders. So let me now hide the poll, and let us move on to the next session. I think the pandemic has meant that things have drastically changed, and we've had to change the way we work. Let us now hear from Chris, who's our next speaker, on how he has had to adapt his team to deal with exactly that and the new challenges going forward. So Chris, over to you whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you, Hans. If we can move to the next slide, please. So I'm going to start with a quote. This is from Sun Tzu. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. I think most of us would reflect that 2020 has had more than its fair share of chaos. I work for an organization called Dentsu Group. They are a multinational Japanese advertising and communications company. Been around over 100 years. Dentsu on its own is one of the world's largest advertising agencies, and as a group, it's one of the largest agency networks globally, operating in about 150 countries. My role there, I work in their international business, which is basically everything outside of Japan, as a finance director supporting their technology function in Asia Pacific. Puts me in a bit of an interesting position. So I actually sit kind of at a regional level, supporting and working with colleagues in 15 countries, mainly FP&A teams. So this is a bit of a shared insight around what they've been going through. On the next couple of slides, I'll share some insights around the challenges they've been facing as we've adapted to our new normal. Next slide, please, Hans. So what is our new normal? So for Dentsu, 2020 has been a challenging year. Revenue's down, probably like many of your organizations, due to reduced client spend. And heading into 2021, we're expecting a fairly low growth environment. We operate in a fairly competitive marketplace. We've got a set of traditional competitors who are the other large agency networks such as WPP, Publicis, Havas, and also a whole range of challenges coming in, including the professional services firms. So we've got Accenture Interactive, Deloitte Digital, KPMG, very active in our space. Our business has grown historically by acquisition. We completed over 150 deals in the last 5 years, but that brings with it another set of challenges. Many of those businesses haven't been integrated well, and that lack of integration adds complexity around people, process, and platforms. Lastly, 80% of our cost base is people or people-related costs such as property and travel. So how have we adapted and responded to that challenge? Well, in a tough environment, what we're facing into is how do we protect what we have, we grow what we can, and simplify what we do. And in terms of revenue growth, there's still quite a lot of client pitch activity, but what we're doubling down on is really trying to understand our customers and looking for those kind of, the +1 incremental growth opportunities rather than trying to land large new clients. We're trying to simplify our operating model. At the moment, we have about 160 different brands in the market globally. Makes it very hard for our customers to know who they're dealing with. And our goal in the next 2 years is to drop that from 160 down to 6. We're also just going through a business transformation. It was formally announced to the Tokyo Stock Exchange on Monday, with a focus on reducing our operating costs and preserving cash. Next slide, please. So against that backdrop, what have our FP&A teams had to do? To give a bit of context, most of our countries I deal with, we're still largely Excel based for forecasting. We have very few sophisticated driver-based planning tools. We lack a common GL system across the region, and we have a large number of entities that we're trying to plan for. Makes it quite a challenging environment to operate in. What I've found working with these teams within our region, what we're seeing is a lot of scenario planning, a lot of what if analysis. Businesses trying to transform, it's trying to move at pace and plan for that kind of uncertainty. There's also a real cost focus at the moment, both in terms of what are those kind of key process costs, what cost to serve your clients, cost to sell, and then as we're doing investment cases, what's that kind of cost benefit analysis. How's it being done? Well, we're seeing a mixture of both traditional kind of financial data sources, but also those non-financial and operational metrics coming through. We're also seeing a lot of maybe a lack of tools and a lot of offline templates being circulated around the place. In terms of who's doing it, this is probably leading back to the 5 roles that Hans started us off with. There's a great term used by my regional CFO that we have too many water carriers. These are people who fetch and carry data from one system to the other, or from one set of users to another set of users. And rather than building a pipeline, we're just shuffling water backwards and forwards. So we've got too many analysts when what we actually need are the storyteller and the influencer. Going through change, we want people who can tell the future story, make recommendations to the business, pressure test assumptions, and be that sounding board for the business as it goes through change. We're also seeing a need for that kind of data scientist and architect type role, really just to connect a set of disparate systems together to make them a lot more integrated. The challenge of doing that is we're in a cost-constrained environment, so having to make do with what we have and upskill where we can't bring in critical new hires. So what does that future look like for Dentsu? Next slide, please. So it's all about, in the FP&A space, simplifying, standardizing, and centralizing what we do through the removing of those non-value-added activities, anything bespoke, non-standard, and moving the regular repeatable tasks to shared services and centers of excellence, i.e. cutting out the water carriers. We'll end up with fewer onshore but value-adding roles, focused on those kind of core business partnering skill sets. We are seeing investment in tools, in the short term, leveraging what we have. And one of the benefits we have is one of our agencies is a Salesforce Platinum partner. So we're going to use Salesforce as a tool to support short-term revenue forecasting. So making do with what we have, and then in the longer term, look to build out proper group-wide budgeting and forecasting systems. As with many of your businesses, big push into data and driving some automated business insights and KPI reporting, leveraging BI tools such as Tableau, and that's focusing on things like client profitability, project profitability, and resource utilization. It's kind of ironic. A key part of our business is providing these solutions to our clients, so tracking the performance of an advertising campaign or building a targeted audience set, but we don't apply that same lens internally. So that's probably kind of takeout for me, is to think about what skills and capabilities you have within your business so that you can leverage that to improve your internal processes. So in conclusion, reflecting on 2020 and looking ahead to 2021, the opening quote is rather apt for Dentsu. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Excellent presentation. And just thinking of, how you guys have kind of described where you are, but much more importantly is where you're going to go. And I really like the analogy of the water carrier and the pipeline, which is excellent. So thank you for a great insight. I would like to quickly ask Abby to give us her point of view on your presentation. Please, Abby.
Yeah, hi. Chris, spot on. I think you should coin the water carrier pipeline terminology because it is so visual and so true. And using the three Ps, people, processes, and platform, always means you can pivot in, and this is the year for pivoting. So, hey, chaos, we have opportunities. Let's use those opportunities properly. So, great presentation. I can see that working. I think from an hour today, I shall be using that terminology. So thank you for sharing. That's great.
Thank you very much, Abby. And Mark, your insight, please.
Yeah, Chris, really good presentation and a good story, I think, reflecting the challenges that a lot of companies are having at the moment. I think what I picked up was that water carrier exactly, and I guess we spoke about the role of the data architect in terms of how you can maybe bring those tools, solutions, and data together in an automated way. I just want to echo that. I think that's almost more important now than, I guess, the practices behind that, because I guess if people have less time that they need to spend on carrying the water, then they can spend some more time on those value-added activities. So yeah, I appreciate where you're at and the priority of what you're trying to do at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you, Abby. And Chris, as we pointed out, I think it's the vision out there and how you guys are going to get to that vision is very important, and keep on it to improve your team, but also to look forward to any other black swans that were to hit us. The team is prepared and adapted and can move on very quickly from there. So thank you very much, Chris, for your presentation. Moving on to our next session is the polling question. But before we move on to that polling question, I would just quickly like to remind our audience that you can ask via the chat box any question you have for our team members, please. So Just before that, let us quickly move on to our poll number 3 and hear from our audience on their experience or challenges of working remotely from home. So just about to launch it, which I've done, and I'm going to just quickly read it out for you guys as to what is the biggest remote work challenge that you find in your day-to-day. Is it working too much? Is it prioritizing your work? Is it interruptions? Is it loneliness and lack of human interaction? Or finally, communication issues and being out of the loop? So if you can vote, please. We have quite a lot of people voted already. I'll give it another 5 seconds, and I will now close the vote and share it with our members of the panel. So 35% find that working too much is the biggest remote work challenge. Prioritizing work doesn't seem to be an issue at all. 6% is interruption, 15% loneliness and lack of human interaction, 43% on communication issues and being out of the loop, which is really high. So Chris, can I get your point of view on what we're seeing here, please, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Hans. Yeah, look, I think pretty much any of those would have summed up what we've been through in 2020. My thought was it was probably going to be working too much. Certainly, that's what I'm finding. That creep of your working hours and the blurring of your kind of work-life balance, is a particular challenge. But also, yeah, the lack of that kind of being around in the office, having those regular kind of face-to-face conversations and finding out what's going on is just as big a problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chris. Mark, can we have your opinion on how the poll is done here, please?
Sure, Hans. Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think 2020 is pretty much summed there. And yeah, I do think that the biggest risk that we can see there is if you're having just communication through digital channels, you kind of miss out that opportunity to get the bigger picture. And if there's very much just a one-way dialogue, often through meetings and webcams, you can sometimes miss the context. So I think being out of the loop, even though you're very busy, is probably a real risk there. But yeah, I think it's something that I guess the new normal means we need to try and find solutions to these. And
yep.
I agree that's probably the biggest one.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chris, and absolutely spot on. I think worryingly, I find that 35% working too much is still out there. We're still working too much whilst we were in the office. We're still working too much whilst we're at home. So working together in terms of trying to tackle that, as well as being out of the loop because we're at home, are the key challenges for us leaders going forward. So thank you very much, members of the panel, for your opinion. Again, I would like to quickly remind our attendees to send your questions via the chat box. So now moving on to our next session, then technology. So technology undoubtedly plays a huge role. And how does tech help us to advance and build award-winning team, add value? Let us hear from Mark, who is the Enterprise Director at Qubix, Australia and New Zealand, on how technology can help us build this award-winning team. So over to you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Hans, and good afternoon, everyone. So I think I have the very exciting topic to talk about today. I think in the last 2 to 3 years, there's been incredible advancements in the technology around FP&A, and especially with COVID as well. Technology has played a real driving force in terms of transforming companies and helping to build those winning FP&A teams. Hans, if you can move to the next slide. This is just a slide on I guess the 33 plus years experience that Qubix has had, where we specialize in FP&A globally. And there's just a couple of examples I want to touch on here. What you can see is there's actually quite a changing range in terms of the companies that we work with. Originally, they were very large, very so wealthy companies that had large, sophisticated requirements. But more recently, we've seen that even not-for-profit smaller companies are able to adopt the leading platforms and benefit from that. So I think that's a key theme in technology. Besides advancing incredibly in terms of what you can do with it, the adoption is far more accessible in the market now as well. You might have seen a presentation at the previous board by Luxottica, one of our clients. I think that's a really good example of a transformation where the company worked on transforming how it worked, what the people did from an organization perspective, as well as the technology, really moving from an old practice to a new practice and receiving incredible benefits from that, controlling the planning, but also moving the business to a profitable business. The last example where we've seen incredible benefit is we work with the NHS, and we've built a planning and an analytics solution with them. And that's been deployed across many trusts and hospitals in that area. And that's really giving them the insight into their data to support their planning process. So from a financial, workforce planning, all of their data is in one place now that they have access to, so they can analyze it, get insights they didn't have before, and really improve their planning outcomes. What's great there as well is that solution template is really applicable anywhere else. And we're looking at trying to get that benefited from other regions in the world as well. Thanks, Hans. If we can go to the next slide. This slide is really our view on, I guess, companies. If you're looking at technology, if you're not happy with Excel or with your current platform, here are a few things that we think you need to consider. So firstly, it's around which technology would be a good fit for you. So just to consider, some of the features you might look at is, do you want your ERP data to be automatically integrated? Do you want strong reporting and analytics capability to be part of that platform? Is performance and security important? And do you want to, and I'd recommend you look at software as a service options, where you won't be constrained by having to do upgrades, which are expensive and prohibitive, where with the software as a service model, you get all of those latest features, often on a sort of quarterly basis that you can benefit from. So have a think about what features are really important for you. And then from a strategy and capability perspective, besides obviously selecting the tool, have a think about what skills you need from your company. Do you develop those? Do you acquire those skills? And what does that look like from I guess, a project perspective, but then also after the project is live, how you operate as an operating model? Again, the analogy of the water carrier, I think it's important to think of what do you want people to do versus what do you want to automate? So that's something to consider. And then also, what do you want to do as a company versus what would you like a partner to come in and support you with? Obviously, partners often have special expertise and experience, but you definitely want some internal capability built during that process. Another consideration is the design of what we call a finance data hub. So what is that data hub that you need to make those data-driven decisions? That's often not just finance data, but that operational, that non-finance data as well. And that might include your predictive or scenario modeling data. So you need to consider what data you need in that and how that's designed, along with metadata. So if you're thinking about cost centers, you're adding in a new cost center, or you acquire a new business, how does that data flow through your systems automatically so that it's available for your planning and for your reporting that you're doing? And lastly, it's around approval status. So managing which data is work in progress, still being analyzed, and which data is ready to be reported. Those are some of the considerations we think you need to look at when you're considering a platform. Hans, if we can go to the next slide. The new platforms that we have now are incredible amount of features that have come out, like I said, in the last 2 or 3 years. So I'm just going to talk about 3 themes: automation and robotics. We spoke about what people need to do and what you automate. So there in this section, what I would look at as an example is if you're taking Excel spreadsheets, combining them with other Excel spreadsheets, emailing them or copying them into Word documents or PowerPoint for your reporting. Those are the things that we really believe should be automated. Again, using that finance data hub and technology, you should be able to click the button and get the output that you need as part of that process. Advanced analytics, again, we spoke about bringing all of that data together to drive those decisions. But just to expand on that, sales, inventory, HR, payroll, all the finance metrics and I guess KPIs that are important to you as a business, if you have that at your fingertips, you'll be able to see the correlation between the data, and often the tools can actually explain the insights and the alignment of data that you can't sort of manually do. So the benefit of the advanced analytics really drives an improved business outcome that humans wouldn't be able to do. Collaboration, we spoke about remote teams working. Again, the latest technology tools do enable that. So if you're having different business partners, different geographic regions, there's real features within the tool set now where you can chat, you can see an audit trail of why decisions were made, why those figures exist. And that really just creates that transparency of the process, but also of how the data is arrived and reported at. So it's a little bit of a deep dive into that, but these kind of features exist. Like I said, they're very accessible in the tools now. And if they're important to you, just know that they're out there. And I'd suggest having a look at those in the market. So Hans, if you move to the next one, this is just a few examples of some of the real benefits that companies have achieved through modernizing the FP&A tools. I guess the bottom 2 are often the business case drivers to go and implement new tools. But what's more important, I think, is the real business value of the top 3, where they actually get reduced numbers of days to forecast cycle, especially with COVID, if you have to forecast more often. And not having to do upgrades. Again, that was really seen as a real benefit. So I guess in summary, consider the technology, but look at the features that you need, but know that there's some real benefits that you can achieve with those tools. Thanks, Hans.
Thank you very much, Mark. A great presentation, and it's great of you to kind of share. First of all, what are the technology consideration, and then what are the tools available for us to use and get and build that award-winning team. So I would like to ask Himashi to come in and give us her point of view on your presentation, please, Mark. So Himashi, over to you.
Really valuable information and success stories, Mark. For finance teams, greater investment in analytics, data access, and core technology, it's not really a question of if, it's a matter of when. And the data that Mark really reviewed clearly demonstrate that, the sooner, the better. Technology, I think it goes beyond process efficiency. It goes to the core of FP&A's mandate, which speakers before me have said. It's really providing operations and management with data-driven decision support and foresight, so you can really prepare for what's coming around the corner. And that's impossible to do without access to real-time data and advanced analytics.
Yeah, thank you very much, Himashi, and thank you very much for the insight, Mark. Because of timing reason, we will now move on to our next session. So again, thank you very much for sharing out on technology, Mark, and now let us just move to our next polling session, which is what we want to hear from our attendees today around collaborative technology. So If you can tell us, how many of you currently use modern collaborative technology for FP&A? And the answers for the polling question is yes, we do. No, we do not, but plan to do so in the near future. Oh, third option is completely no, we do not, and there is no plan for implementation at all in the future. So if you could vote, please. I'll give us another 5 seconds or so. We've had over 50% vote already, and I am now just about to close the vote and share it with our members of the panel. So 32% said yes, we do have collaborative technologies that we use. 57% says no, we do not, but we are implementing it or planning on implementing it. And 11% surprisingly says no, we do not, and there's no plan to implement it. So, Mark, what do you think of what we're seeing here?
I think it's very relevant of the, I guess, the market. We've also seen a lot of people who are adopting the new technologies. So yeah, I think there's a real drive to be able to plan more quickly and better, especially I think COVID's driven a lot of that. So absolutely, it's good to see that 32% already do that. But I guess also encouraging that 57% there that are planning to do it rapidly. And like I said, I think they will see the benefit of that from a business perspective. If they can plan better, they should be more successful.
Thank you very much, Mark. And Himashi, your point of view, please.
Yeah, I echo Mark's comments. It's good to see companies are either using collaborative technology or planning to do so in the future. The uncertainty sparked by COVID-19 has really led to additional emphasis on scenario planning, speed of incorporating market data, and agile responses. So companies that have made an investment in FP&A have had a stronger ability to respond and, at the end of the day, make better informed decisions during times like these. So it's really good to see.
Thank you very much, both. Thank you very much, and we now unhide this and carry on with our presentation. So how do you bring all of what we've discussed so far together? Talking to us is Himashi Suriano, who is MD for the Asia Pac region at AFP, and she will show us how to work with the FP&A skill roadmap, combining all of what we've seen so far. So over to you, Himashi, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you, Hans. Hi again, everyone. Hans, you can go to the next slide there. Great, so I want to start with a quote from Jack Welch, who said, "An organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage." This is true in normal times and even more so today. And the competitive advantage is not just for the organization, but more so for the FP&A professional. So next slide, please. So to reinforce the points that my fellow panelists reviewed here today, the future of finance is as partners and major players in your organization. Your FP&A team is in the best position to help make data-driven decisions, think about your company's future, understand customer behaviors, trends, and needs. So which skills are critical in a best-in-class FP&A team? I'm going to provide you today with a skills roadmap. So let's think of this like a pyramid, and it's focusing on these key skills: financial acumen, data management, data analytics, and business partnering. So coincidentally, these are the skills that are in high demand right now. And the vision here is building the skill sets that allow you to rethink and reshape. First, finance for finance to drive efficiency, and secondly, finance for your company to drive growth. So think about finance for finance driving efficiency. It's important that the internal workings in finance adjust to the new reality we're seeing today. And it's becoming imperative to eliminate and simplify, standardize, automate, and consolidate the traditional role of finance. So when we look at finance for the organization driving growth, that really means adding value and is internal client facing. So it means planning, analyzing, and advising, which is becoming increasingly digital and adaptive. So let's review each of these FP&A skill sets. Next slide, please. So the first skill at the base of the pyramid is finance acumen skills. So here's what we're talking about here. It's the ability to connect long-range plans to finance and operations. It's improving forecasting skills to create more accurate short and long-range plans and budgets. It's focusing the financial analysis on future actions by applying efficient model design and where you're able to develop assumptions and draw conclusions. And lastly, evaluating the business case for new markets and products by utilizing a deep understanding of financial statements, risk management concepts, business frameworks, and micro and macroeconomic concepts. So next slide for data management skills. Here, FP&A should be working with IT to create a sustainable data process. Your team should focus on supporting your company's strategy by creating dashboards and visualizations that provide an impactful snapshot into strategic initiatives. And to develop an automation mindset. So what do I mean by that? It's moving from a one-time answer to a solution in perpetuity based on finance acumen. Next slide, please. When looking at data analytics, we're talking about how to build a quantitative skill set that can process large amounts of internal and external data to get insights into underlying trends, interpret and observe change in performance before your company does, and make recommendations that can improve the performance of divisions, initiatives, projects based on data management and ongoing dialogue with senior leadership. I know this is easier said than done. Teams spend a great amount of time collecting and consolidating data rather than analyzing data. It's important for your team to prioritize the analysis, shed non-value added work, and leverage tools and systems. So let's move on to the last skill set, business partnerships. One of the biggest traps for an FP&A team is to work in a silo and crunch data. This is where the FP&A team gets disconnected from the rest of the organization. You must evolve into a trusted partner. You know, as Abby encourages with her team, it's important that each member of your team be engaged with the operating teams, be it supply chain, commercial, projects, and work closely with these functions to develop a deep understanding of your business and industry, but also align the analysis to help the operating teams make better informed, data-driven decisions. So how can you do this? Using the skills from the pyramid, leverage analytics, data management, and finance acumen to showcase creativity in solving your company's challenges. You know, creating a culture where colleagues see you as a needed resource. It will be an automatic to bring finance into a project at the beginning to gain a strategic perspective and help decode the data into meaningful intel to ensure success. These 4 skills ensure that your FP&A team is reaching its full potential. It's imperative to take advantage of organizations like AFP to help your team upskill and reskill to not only be effective, but efficient. So make sure you have the right skills on your team to perform at its highest level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Himashi. A great presentation, and thanks for sharing and breaking it really down in terms of the 4 different sort of skill sets and mapping where we should be and knowing where to go in our organization. Thank you very much for that, Himashi. In the interest of time, we will now quickly move on to talking about, you know, how, from a recruiter's perspective, we get around what's happening in the new normal, and how is FP&A as a job faring in this new market. So, Ross, over to you when you're ready, Ross.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hans, and thanks to everyone who's been. So, hi everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to provide a bit of context around FP&A Teams through the lens of a recruiter, which is the role I've been doing for the last 10 years. I've got 3 slides to share covering how to attract and retain the right talent in FP&A, some of the key demographics within the talent pool in Australia, and some of the key behaviours that we're seeing to be in the highest demand. So if Hans, you can jump onto my first slide. So what you'll see here is the top considerations that people within FP&A teams have when considering a new role. And so indeed, it's relevant to retaining the talent you already have. And you'll see that the work culture and the team dynamic being the #1 consideration, followed closely by challenges, learning, and leadership. So this is where you can have, as the leader, the biggest impact in ensuring your FP&A team is retaining the talent that you have, and also an attractive proposition for new talent. And we've already heard in a few of the previous presentations the need in times like this to upskill the people that you have. Money there is the least relevant consideration, and so the least effective lever that you can really pull. So it's worth thinking about. If we move on to the next slide, please, Hans. Here I wanted to give a bit of context around the candidate pool in Australia, and I'm going to focus on just a couple of these points to provide a bit more context. So in terms of the current intention of people to make a move, at the moment, due to COVID, we're seeing 30% less applications come through for FP&A positions specifically compared to last year. Now, overall, this year, there's 50% less job adverts online. So it will feel like you're getting a good choice because there's more applicants per vacancy. But overall, there are less applicants in the market. The choice is more limited and the quality poorer than a year ago. So that's really important to mention. And then thinking about how you can actually attract the right talent. The second thing I wanted to touch on is that you can see here 50% of candidates in leadership roles have moved in the last 2 years. Now, this tells me that there's clearly high demand for FP&A leaders. If that many people have made a move recently, it's going to be a competitive space and it's going to be hard to pull people away. So again, I think bearing in mind this is a high demand skill set that you have, but also if you're looking to bring in better talent into your team from external, it's going to be competitive. And then maybe finally, just moving on to the third slide. This is some insights on how we see the new normal, which we're talking about today, affecting teams and people as individuals. We've got uncertainty that will remain. We've got heightened pressure on anticipating future events, greater expectations in terms of speed of information being delivered. And so that's pushing demand of teams into a few core areas, which I've highlighted here: people's resilience and adaptability to the environment, their creativity around coming up with new and different solutions, and their curiosity and willingness to challenge the status quo and to challenge norms. So if you have these skills in your team, I think you're in a good position for the 6 to 12 months ahead. If you don't, these are certainly things that are worth fostering or bringing in from outside. So hopefully those 3 slides gave a little bit of context about what we're seeing out there. It's certainly been a very busy couple of months in this space, and I foresee that it will be a very busy and active space in the recruitment sector for the next 12 months as well. So thank you.
Ross, thank you very much for a great presentation and the insights, especially in the Australian market out there. So it was great to hear around the trends, what we should be doing and what's really happening in that market. So thank you very much for that, Ross. And this now brings us to a good point in our presentation today, which is the concluding part. So what we've seen today is we've gone through, what are the different team roles that we need to build that a team, the roles and the skills. How do we build it and how do we sustain that team going forward? How have we adapted our teams to this black swan and potential black swans that are going to come around in the future? Mark shared with us technologies available for us to move that extra bit. Himashi also then shared with us is how do you map out those skills and how do you put those skills into all these different elements. And finally we heard from Ross there about what's happening in the market and a bit of confidence, a boost as well as anything else coming from Ross. I would just like to leave you with this slide there and the thought that after talking about all of this, we still find out that only 15% of our sales skill set people believe is on technical side of things. So 85% is still the softer skills as we see. So food for thought there. This also then nicely brings us to the last part of our session, which is the Q&A bit of our session. I would like to invite Larissa to join us and to share with us the questions that our attendees have put to the panel. So Larissa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Hans. And thank you so much, panelists, for fantastic session. I would like to remind all the participants that please use your chat box to send the questions to us. And even if we don't have enough time to answer all of them, we will be able to send you emails with the answers after this. So we are starting Q&A session. And the first question is to you, Abi. A very interesting question indeed. I'm baffled by 43% still having lack of alignment of goals as an issue. This is something that we saw 20 years ago. We need to do something about this. What do you think, Abi? How we can tackle this problem?
I think goals are quite important in speaking to first the organization, looking at the golden thread, I kind of say, from the beginning all the way to your group. You need to constantly remind people what those goals are and keep it in front of you so that you can always ensure you are going in the right step. So for me, goals is a reminder of what you want to do, what you're going to do, and how you're going to do it. Use your ability as leaders, but also listen and communicate what those goals constantly, that it becomes part of you as much as possible.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Abi. Thank you. The next question is to Amanath. Amanath, during your presentation, you mentioned how you use these new FP&A roles. So the two key roles, data scientist and architect, they're new and very difficult to find. So how do you manage this? Do you develop those roles inside of your team, or do you hire people outside? And also the next question is, we see a lot of dynamics in FP&A teams. Except of those roles that you mentioned, what other FP&A teams can do and play for the better synergy?
Okay. So in our company, what we did for this kind of new roles is we hired one guy who had experience from the market, but to support him, what we did was hire graduates, fresh graduates from the universities. The reason being, what we found is the older people who are experienced in core finance are kind of reluctant to expand their view once they reach a certain age. So it was easier to get new enthusiastic guys from the universities fresh and work under the leadership of this one guy who worked. And then of course they were given the direction on what is the kind of the company's priorities were, so that they can focus on the big data, etc., in the market to see what kind of trends are driving, etc. So that was regarding the composition of the team regarding the data scientists. The other portion, basically my view is that the FP&A team has to align very, very closely with the business objectives, keep adapting to the changing circumstances, because what I have seen in my experience is finance and FP&A may be slightly slower to response, and this can lead to its value to the company going down. So it's very essential that we keep learning, keep evolving ourselves, come up with new things so that the management is kind of supported to be agile in its decision making. So that's the key purpose of our existence. Thank you.
Manas, thank you so much for this answer. Definitely a lot of things happening right now, and thank you for your practical insights. The next question is to you, Chris. Which are the most challenging roles required in 2025, which you find there is lack in finance accounting market of Australia?
Thanks, Larissa. So, kind of, if I heard the question correctly, so we're forward-looking, 5 years in the future. My personal view, I think it's still the storyteller and the influencer type roles that are going to come even more important. I think we can automate a lot of the analyst roles. I think there is maybe a periodic need for that kind of architect to link things together, and maybe the data scientists as well. But I think those are kind of more point in time, once you've got everything set up and running. It's really those people who can stand up in front of their business stakeholders, explain what's happened, the so what, and then the now what, and really drive that kind of business activity off the numbers. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you. The next question is to you, Mark. It's about technology. Technology is changing so quickly. How we can make sure that we always adapt it properly, and when we implement the system, very often it could be outdated in the next 2 years. So what would be your advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it all comes down to the team, almost the culture for learning. So you're right, even in every quarter, there's often changes in platforms and then some major changes that come in regularly. So I think the focus for companies should be, being really aware of what's happening and changing in the technology space, but also having a culture of learning and being inquisitive in terms of looking at what you could do and benefit from the platforms. So I'd suggest creating capacity in the team and encouraging them to explore and creating a learning path for people when they join and making sure that the knowledge is retained within the team if people do move on. Those would be my suggestion.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for sharing your experience on this. The next question is to you, Himashi. For this FP&A certification, AFP for FP&A certification, do you take into consideration all of those new team roles that were discussed here?
Yes, so our FP&A certification not only focuses on the technical aspect of modeling and analytics, but it really focuses on business partnering, being an effective communicator, what information, once you have extracted the data, what information is effective to communicate and kind of tell your story. So it's really speaking to those skill sets that are the softer skill sets that are important: communication, negotiation, influencing. It really helps to round out an effective FP&A professional.
Thank you so much, Himashi. And Rose, now the question is to you. It will be the last question, but please remember to send us more questions if you have. We will be able to answer after the meeting. Rose, the question is about accounting qualification. So do you see professional accounting qualification is still important for FP&A, or do you see that it's changing now?
I think it's a great question. What we see is that in order for people to perform strongly in an FP&A role, a lot of our clients will ask for people to have a very strong technical foundation in accounting. So that typically is a CPA in Australia or a CA qualification and experience in a financial accounting role. So that is still the majority view, that people would come from a strong technical accounting background first and move into FP&A later and build on that. So in that sense, yes, CPA and CA qualifications and accounting experience are still regarded very highly and advantageous. It is perhaps something that may change where more commercial qualifications and MBAs and other things like that might weigh more in the future, but we haven't seen that yet.
Rose, thank you so much for your answer, and thank you so much, our fantastic panel, for all your answers, and thank you for questions from our participants. Let me conclude this Q&A session, but we still have some questions unanswered, but please be assured that we will do this later through email. Hans, back to you.
Larissa, thank you very much for a great session, and member of the esteemed panel, thank you very much for your insight in the Q&A session. This brings us nicely to our last set of slides for the day, which is around a big thank you. Thank you to Qubix for sponsoring the event, our technology partner. Would like to say thank you to AFP as well, our educational partner, for being with us today. Thank you, Michael Page, as well, our recruitment partner. Thank you to a great panel of experts for the great insight on all of the subject matter. It was truly magnificent. Above all, a big thank you to the ladies and gentlemen that have taken time out today to join us, our webinar attendees. We hope you enjoyed the session and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Please stay connected, join our platform, join FP&A Trends. And finally, just a reminder that the feedback form will come as soon as I close the session. So if you could give us your feedback, that'll be excellent. So once again, thank you all members of the panel, thank you all participants, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you, and that concludes our webinar for the day. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.